Hello there, everybody. Welcome along to EFL Debate. This is the League One podcast, and we're talking about two teams in particular this evening, Bradford City and Leyton Orient. So I'm delighted to be joined by Chris Windsor from the 1911 podcast. Now, Chris, I've been badgering you to start a podcast for quite a while now, so I'm delighted that you're up and running now.
Yeah, it's been an interesting time. I mean, we'd had conversations originally about whether we were going to start at the beginning of this season, but we decided that we were pretty excited about starting it. And luckily for us, we started it just towards the end of last season. So obviously there were the moments and the Sarcevic goal that everybody knows about, 96th minute. So yeah, it's really good. It's going well. We're enjoying it and just learning by the day and just enjoying what it is to be at City at the moment, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, I suggested the when you first started talking about doing a podcast, I suggested the name "The Road to Nowhere" podcast, but I'm not sure that would be very accurate at the moment.
No, probably not, Gab. And I think if we'd have gone with that, then more City fans would have probably thought that you were still had a bit of an agenda against Bradford City, wouldn't they? So we decided.
I argued for Harry Lewis over Lawrence Vigouroux, so no. Oh gosh, Parksy, how are you, mate? Good to see you.
I'm good, buddy. I'm good. I'm ticking over as the Orient are seemingly.
Absolutely. Chris, I'll come to you first. You've had a wonderful start to the season. I think most Bantams were more optimistic about your chances before the season than I was. So I'm going to look a bit of a lemon for that. You're currently inside the top two, but I think it's probably fair to say that even the most optimistic of chickens probably weren't expecting yourselves to be inside the top two in mid-October.
Absolutely not. I mean, who did? Maybe Andy from the podcast. I think that he was always somebody who said that he felt that we had a bit of a potential to get promoted this season. I think for me, it's always been that we get that 50 points mark. I was, quite comfortable with the thought of, staying up this season. I think what we've done so far this season has shocked pretty much everybody, really. And you look at the teams that we've played and we've beaten. I don't think that's it's not a coincidence. It's not something that's just come out of thin air, really. I think that we have really performed, and I think it's been my favourite season for a long time. Even more than last season, obviously getting promoted. But it's just really enjoyable to watch. I went to the Everton under-21s game on Tuesday, and that's something that I would never have done previously. I wouldn't have been that bothered, but I wanted to see what the fringe players were all about, where what could we do, where could they fit in. And I just think that there's just a feeling at the club at the moment where something that I've complained about for years that it hasn't been right, and I think that now the club have understood that, and we're all on the same trajectory together, and it's brilliant. It's absolutely, it's just something that we're all really enjoying. We're enjoying the ride. Not saying that I think that we're going to get promoted, but I think it's something that we're really proud of being a Bradford City fan right now, and it's just great to see, and we're really, really enjoying the ride so far.
Certainly are. I mean, perhaps I suppose from your point of view, it's more common for teams to maybe need the second season, the first season to do. For Leyton Orient, you did really well in your first season. I think you finished in the top half in 23-24, and then the following season you managed to crack the top six. So, are you surprised from an outside perspective that Bradford City have been able to really set the league on fire straight from the off?
I don't think so. I think there's always one team that tends to have the bounce, don't they? There's always one team that gets promoted and then still carries that on for a little bit. I think a few people thought that was going to be Doncaster, but after playing that weekend, I don't think that's ever going to be a case. No. No, Bradford are a big club, aren't they? Let's say it how it is in terms of the size of the club, the fan base, their history. I mean, recent times as well. Obviously, playing in the Premier League, they're one of those clubs. And if you're going to say right now, in my opinion, who's going to maintain the form at the top, and I don't really want to get Farley on my case about this, but I'd say Bradford have got a better chance of maintaining it, because I just feel that they will. They're scoring goals, they're keeping goals out. I think Stevenage at some point their goals per game are going to start to dry up a little bit. I just feel that's the way it's going to go. I can see Bradford being a surprise package. Shall we say that?
Yeah. Well, interesting. I mean, Chris, I had assumed, if we go back, even 12 months ago, it's all happened that quickly, hasn't it? I would have said that the club would have needed sufficient off-field change to lead into on-field change and these kind of results. I would have guessed that, if you had told me 12 months ago that Bradford City would be second in League One, I would have assumed it would have been because they managed to get a takeover through, because Stefan Rupp sold and the club's got fresh owners who have got a bit of money to spare. It hasn't happened like that. And maybe it could happen the other way around, that actually the on-field performance inspired by Graham Alexander and certainly David Sharp as director of football could actually lead into the off-field change that could happen the other way around.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of changes within this club. I think this does probably go back nearly 2 years, where there was a lot of division in the fan base regarding kind of the ownership with Stefan Rupp, and potentially I think that Stefan probably didn't understand the expectation or the need for Bradford to kind of not be just sitting in League Two, which we're not going to accept that. That's pure simple as that. And I think that when he made the admission that he needed to step up, he needed to get involved more, which we have seen, really have seen it. He's coming to a lot more games where he was probably coming to one game a season. You've mentioned already about David Sharp coming in. That's been so influential. It's been a massive part of what has changed, certainly with regarding kind of recruitment, especially when we were looking at kind of like some of the players that we were bringing in, and we were bringing them in on 3-year deals. And I don't want to mention the names, but Tyler Smith is a perfect example of that. And the fact that they were getting these 3-year deals, and now we're not looking at that. We're kind of, there's a little bit more of an element of, what are those kind of positions, but also the kind of people that we're bringing in. I would certainly mention Max Power in that conversation, where he also said that he potentially might have even come to us if we were in League Two still. And the kind of like additions of Nick Powell, who isn't going to be able to play 90 minutes every week. We know that, but the kind of influence that he has on this team. But also, I think it goes back to the signing of Josh Nerfield for me. I think that was when I really started to get excited. He was somebody that I really thought a lot of at Wimbledon. A lot of people might disagree with me, but I personally thought he was the best player in League Two last season. I'm massive fan for him. So when we brought him in, I was really kind of delighted. And I think the additions that we've had this summer, we brought them in early so that they were ready for pre-season, and it's just come from there really. And everyone that we've brought in, I would say, has made an influence or has made an impact in this City team this season.
Certainly has. I mean, you mentioned Josh Nyfield there, and I love the way that he gets up and down, and he's got so much pace, hasn't he? And he's got real quality at the end. That was a fantastic investment for the club, wasn't it?
Absolutely huge. And I think it just spoke volumes that we managed to get Josh in and kind of understand the project that Bradford City was about. It certainly wasn't someone that was on my radar. We talk about, for instance, like Brad Halliday is a phenomenal right wing back, and bringing in Josh, and Brad's now fighting for his position. And I think that there's just been a different mood set, I would say, at the club, where we're now saying, okay, we can bring in these kind of players. We are worthy of that. And I just think that has been part of, again, the change. And I think it's really important as well to mention that the change has also been predominantly from Graham Alexander. I think the way that we play football, the way that he demands what he does from his players has been very different to what we've had for a long, long time. I would probably say as far back as Phil Parkinson, in my honest opinion. And he's somebody that he's absolutely loved at the football club, and the job that he's doing, which slightly worries me at times, because obviously there's been a few rumours of other clubs being interested in him. And hopefully, fingers crossed, with his new contract that he got in the summer, that means that he will stay out and see the project through. I mean, there's going to be a couple of clubs out there that he might leave us for if things go to pot. I mean, I don't think I'm being disrespectful where maybe over optimistic for him, but kind of like the Preston North End job, maybe that might be something, although Heckingbottom's doing a good job there, but also Burnley, maybe that might be something that he might be interested in if that ever came up again. But I think that
I don't know if Burnley would go for. I think Graham Alexander's done a great job, but I don't think clubs in the Premier League and Championship necessarily go for lower league managers as prominently as they used to. So I mean, hopefully he does stay for a long time to come from a Bradford City.
And I think that what I'm trying to say here is how well respected he is. You know, people might be listening and saying that I'm saying that, you know, that he might be the next Burnley manager. I'm not saying that for a second, but I think that that's how highly he's rated at Bradford at the moment, and we're just loving life at the moment. You know, we talk about Farley, for instance, being the happiest man in football. I think I probably am at the moment. I think I could probably fight him for that role. You know, even if they are top of the table, I think that just the expectations of City fans that we are just absolutely loving life, and the results that we're pulling out of the bag every single week, or pretty much every single week, it's just been a great season so far.
Certainly has been. Just before we move on to Leyton Orient, got a couple more questions in terms of who would you say have been your star players so far? And, you know, Neufville we've obviously spoken about. I'm a massive fan of Antley Sarcevic. I think he's a quality footballer.
I think that the person who speaks out straight for me is Max Power. I think that he is somebody who demands respect, but also he's a player that will put his absolute all in. He obviously didn't work very well for him in Denmark last season. Not quite sure why that was, but I think for me, the person so far has been Max Power. His influence, his work rate, and I think that has genuinely been rubbing off on quite a lot of the players. And
I think you possibly missed him as well. Sorry to interrupt there, Chris. I think you missed him as well at Rotherham, where you had to play Tommy Lee there, and maybe it's a slightly different system without a designated holding midfielder in that role. So I wasn't sure about the Max Power signing at the first, but I think he looks like a great signing, and also fair play to Graham Alexander for making a brave decision on Richie Smallwood, who's actually amazing last season. Struggled a little bit at Tranmere so far, and might have struggled with the step up had he gone up to League One. And that was a ruthless decision, Graham Alexander.
Yeah, I do completely agree, and I do wonder. You know, I feel that in Max we've got a proper captain. Tommy Lee, to be fair to him, has been like a new player. He struggled over the last couple of weeks. However, he has been instrumental in that team. He has been he is literally a new player.
But I think of him, Chris, as maybe a more advanced midfielder, or maybe someone who could do what Patterson does. But I like Max Power in that slightly deeper role.
I think the thing that's been great though, Gab, is that we've got a lot of players that are able to move into that position. So whether we need to kind of slow the ball down or we need to speed it up, then we've got Patterson. You know, we've got a lot of players that are able to play those positions. The other player I do want to mention, who for some reason seems to go under the radar, is Torre for me. I think that he's been an absolutely phenomenal signing. Also, a little word out for Pennington as well. When he's been in the team, he's somebody that nobody ever really talks about, but he's been so stable, and we have genuinely missed him. Curtis Till, unfortunately injured at the moment, has been instrumental. Someone who got a lot of abuse, maybe, where when we brought him in, because it was a case of would he be able to step up? He absolutely did, has done that. There's so many to mention, and I feel that that's the great thing at the moment. There are so many players that I would love to mention about, Will Swan, for instance, as well, where didn't have the greatest game against Rotherham, but has been able to score quite a few goals. And I think this is the thing about the team, is that when players maybe pick up these injuries, we do have players to replace them with, and that's probably something that we haven't had. We've kind of had to bring in players, and they've not been as successful as they should have been. But now I think even when there's an injury, we're not too concerned.
Yeah, I think you've got that nice balance between having really good squad depth, but also a bit of stability and continuity in terms of personnel, because you've got 8 players that have started 8 or more of the 11 league games so far, which I think suggests that the players have got a synergy about them and an understanding. So you've got that balance between depth and continuity, which I think is really valuable. Just a final question, because I know Paxy's been patient in the background there. What's possible for Bradford City this season, do you think?
If you'd have asked me at the beginning of the season, I would have probably said as long as we stay up. I think genuinely anything is possible this season. I really do. That's not my bias side. That's genuinely not. I think that when I've watched this team, when we ran riot against Huddersfield, when we ran riot against Cardiff, Luton, Stockport, when we won away from there, I think this team has just got something about it that's a little bit different. Whether that's the teamwork and the ethics that has been instilled in them, I'd say anything's possible this season, and I really do. And it's been so far an absolutely amazing ride, and I'm just looking forward to seeing what happens towards the end of the season.
Yeah, fantastic first quarter of the campaign. Long way to go, but a really nice.
Absolutely.
A nice head start towards 50 points.
Exactly. And, and this is the thing, we're expected to lose this game, that game. And we haven't, even against Doncaster, I think where we lost 3-1, there was a potential that we could get back into the game. I mean, we've always struggled against Doncaster. They seem to be our bogey team, to be honest with you. But there was still that opportunity that we could have got something out of that. And that's the thing. Against, like, for instance, when we were 2-0 down against Rotherham, we looked like we could get back into that game. And I actually thought maybe we'd end up winning it. So
yeah, you'd had chances in the first half through Swan, hadn't you?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Plenty
of chances. But yeah, anything, Gab.
Anything. Paxy, I wanted to ask you about Leyton Orient, and Chris, feel free to come in if you've got any questions. I'm sure we'll talk about well, I wanted to ask you actually about Teo Adaramola to start with, because what he was fantastic for Bradford in the second half of last season. I'm wondering what you've made of him down in E10.
I'll answer that question for you, Gab, but I'm going to say one thing to Chris. As a fellow happy clapper, I recognise a happy clapper, but there's no bigger happy clapper than Matt Farley, mate. It doesn't matter what your team are doing. Farley's way and above. Like he's there. So yeah, I mean, I think I may be wrong, but I believe he was at Stockport beginning of last season before he went to Bradford. There was probably glimpses as to why he dropped down a level at the beginning of the season. I'm not particularly convinced about his defending. Going forward, he's quite athletic, he's strong, he plays a decent ball, but he's sometimes a little bit naive. Change of system recently may have changed the fortunes for him, obviously playing 3 at the back with wing backs now. So, yeah, I think he's definitely going to be a very good player. He's got pace, he's got vision, which at fullback is vital nowadays, especially playing the ball out. And the way that Richie tends to play with them ducking inside as well. Would I still have Jack Curry over Teo? Yes, but we can't live in the past. So he's a good player, and he's settling in. He was out of the team for a little bit, and I think Richie probably saw some of the negatives that he was showing to try and change it up a bit. But he's come back in, and he's done well. He did well at the weekend, so he's got a bite about him as well, which is something that you don't have in many fullbacks nowadays. He likes a tackle, a bit of attitude, a bit of swagger. I'm not moved on from Jack Curry yet. I'm still going to be dreaming of my Loney.
Well, they've got good curry in Bradford, so whether you could give yourselves a curry and they could have Teo back. Are you surprised, Chris, that he's not necessarily torn up trees yet at Leyton Orient?
Yeah, I am, because he was somebody that I think that we would really have liked back at City this current season, and maybe this is what he needs. But I mean, I think of the player that we saw last season. He was instrumental. He was absolutely brilliant. He would take on a player, put a great cross in, very fast as well, incredibly fast player. And I think when I saw the news that he'd gone to Leyton Orient, I thought he would really be one of your pivotal players, which really surprises me that he's just not quite there yet. Maybe he needs a little bit more time. I don't know, but it does really surprise me to hear that he's not actually doing that great, to be honest.
I think it's about, League One level. It used to be the Championships level, right? It's the Premier League's level. When you go up a league, invariably that's going to happen. And myself and Gab have had numerous conversations about Jaden Sweeney when he was with Leyton Orient before, and he's gone to Grimsby and he looks like a much more complete player, stronger, much more assured in what he's doing. I wouldn't be confident in saying Jaden Sweeney would be better than Teo Adaramola at left back for Leyton Orient right now. They're different players. They bring different attributes to the game, but he definitely would probably be better defensively than Teo. So there may be something in that. I mean, he's still young, isn't he? I don't care what anyone says about under 21s, 23 football. You don't get any kind of real life experience playing in those games. Don Ballard has had that kind of baptism of fire, and I'm sure we'll talk about him at some junction today. But he had 3 or 4 loans and couldn't hit a barn door with a banjo, and he was ripping it up at the under 21s. Well, I was trying to use I wasn't going to use the cow's backside in the same, but I think that's just another thing, and maybe in the second half of the season he'll kick on, as Leyton Orient invariably have done every season in League One so far. So it's not ideal when we've shipping in and out players all the time. These players also get caught up in that kind of rotation. So not being in a settled team to start off with probably hasn't helped. But I think Richie may have uncovered a system that works with the players that we've got, or at least the stronger players that we've got now, which may benefit him. Although we have got the news today that Reg has been sidelined with an ACL injury, so that may further dampen our defensive prowess, which we don't need to talk about.
Yeah, and I do wonder, Paxi, do you think we're having a similar conversation about Leyton Orient to last year, where you have a few performances in terms of creating chances and just get on the wrong end of games around sort of autumn, and then something clicks for you and then put a run together? Do you think we could be seeing a similar?
No, I don't think so. If you compare last season, after 12 games, we'd only got 8 points. We'd lost 7. We only scored 10 and we conceded 15. This season we're on 14 already. We've lost 6, so not dissimilar. But we scored 20, and that's the joint most in the division with Bradford. But we've conceded 22, which is 2 more than the next team. So the one thing that I'm trying, and I've said this to you about the Orient's defence, I've never been 100% sold with it. And with the injuries that have happened in the squad, I think our squad is better than what it was last season. I think we've had a better start. Our next 2 or 3 games are really important because we had that jump after Christmas. We started just around Christmas last year. If we start a little bit earlier, that's great. But again, I think there's a lot of teams that have already had a big start to the season. Look at AFC Wimbledon. I know I've said this about Bradford. AFC Wimbledon, their opposition in the division so far have averaged 1.65 points per game. So in theory, Wimbledon have had one of the toughest fixture lists, the way that the form table's been looking. Bradford at 1.3, but Stevenage are at top of the table, and their points per game of their opposition's 1.18. So I don't know. I feel like we're a bit like Peterborough right now. Not the one that's probably going to get relegated, the one that's usually in the division that can't defend but scores 4 goals. We've failed to score in 3 games. One of them was a cup game against Wickham. One was against Northampton, and the first game against Huddersfield we didn't show up. So
no, but Wellens said, I'm sure he said in one of his interviews he could have scored about 20 goals on chances in.
We should have scored 10 goals against Cardiff, and that's not an overstatement. You've had 26 attempts, 13 on target. We outplayed them, but our defence can't keep the goals out. That's the issue. The fact we got a clean sheet on Saturday, I don't want that to paper over the cracks, because Doncaster were absolutely abhorrent. They were abysmal. I think, starting quickly helps that, scoring a goal.
Sorry, very mechanic, I would say Doncaster.
I'm sorry, I just Doncaster, whatever.
Nothing for me.
Richie Wellens, Paxi. Glad that he looks set to stay for now.
You never know what the story is, do you? I think we were all kind of resigned to him going once the betting had been suspended, but we've been there before, haven't we? I mean, so many times that he's been linked with other jobs. He's got a 3-year contract. It's got a sizable release clause in it. I have seen X and various social media platforms stating that Luton are a bigger club. Okay, only just. They're getting a new stadium, so are we.
Only just? Miles bigger.
They're only just.
Miles.
No, listen, I can have banter on this podcast, right? I can have banter, right? But you got to look at trajectory, right? And to me, why would he go to Luton after what they've done to Matt Bloomfield? Now, Matt Bloomfield was second in the division with Wickham last season, and I think if he hadn't have gone, they probably would have had a more successful season than they did. If you're pushing me on it, he goes to Luton. He gets canned after 9 months, and I don't ever call it 9 months because I don't include the summer, so even less time. They're 11th in the division. They're not going to come into League One and suddenly just start ripping things up. Cardiff didn't look great against the Orient. There's a time that you've got to get given. Do I think Jack Wilshire's going to be the one? No, but Richie Wellens definitely would have done a job at Luton, 100%.
But that's interesting, though, because when you're talking about whether Richie Wellens should have gone to Luton, you're saying no. But when you're asked whether he would have been a good appointment, you're saying yes.
Yeah, but he would have been a great appointment for numerous football clubs. I'm just saying that if I'm going to be Richie Wellens and I'm looking at what I've got and what I can see. See, I always, and I'm sorry to bring this analogy into it, if I'm going to ask a girl out and I know the girl, but I know that she flits from relationship to relationship, and I want to have a relationship, I'm not going to just suddenly go, she's going to change for me. You don't need Richie Wellens going to Luton, being 15 games in, having a transfer window, and then they're 12th in the league and they're 15 points away from the playoffs. You can't. You've got to look at it going, right, okay, do I believe in what Leyton Orient are doing? And that is where we're at. He's got great backing. The new owners come in. The board is pretty much the same because, Nigel Travis and Kent Teague are still involved, and Matt Porter. He's got free reign. He controls the club, essentially. I know that we've got new recruiting manager. We've got from Millwall. We've got Martin Ling, and he's done a great job. But Richie gets what Richie wants, more or less.
Do you know what, Parks?
And he's going to go to somewhere like Luton, and you don't know what you're going to get. It's the unknown, isn't it?
I completely agree.
I'll throw it back. I'll give you this question, Chris. How long do you think Jack Wilshire's going to last at Luton?
Do you know what? It's funny because I had this same conversation with someone the other day, and I said that, obviously that it's the fact that everyone talks about him as a great coach, but a great coach is not a manager. And I think that could be very much where Jack really struggles. I'm pretty sure he turned down the Norwich job, didn't he, a couple of years back?
No, I don't think he turned it down. I think he wasn't offered it.
He wasn't offered it, but it looked like he potentially might be going there. I think for me, I personally think that he might struggle. I think that Parksy, I completely agree with you on this one, and I think that when you look at when Richie came in at Leyton Orient, and you look at kind of like the belief and kind of like the respect that he got, from my understanding, he was. He went for the Bradford job. He wasn't given an interview. And you look at kind of what he's built at Leyton Orient. And as you say, things are changing very, very quickly at Leyton Orient. I think for me, when I saw that he was off to Leyton Orient, so the rumours were, I was a little bit disappointed. I think that what he's building at Leyton Orient is certainly over the last, is it 4 years he's been at the club? I think when you look
2022, yeah.
22, and you look at what he's done and what he's built, and also the fact that you've lost a lot of your big time players over this summer, and he's still building, but there's so much confidence in him. For me, I think it's a no-brainer. I don't understand why he would go to Luton as well.
I feel like I don't think Gab agrees with us, Chris.
Well, I think he's wrong again.
I would probably imagine, I think based on the way that Richie's answered some of the questions, I think that he possibly would have wanted the Luton job, and it might be that they chose to go with Wilshere because they felt like he had a long, maybe more of a longer term upside, if you like, because of his coaching pedigree and things like that. But I think Richie would have probably been the safer pair of hands. I would be pretty confident that with that squad,
I've heard this question asked elsewhere, so I'm not going to take credit for it. But Gab, why do football clubs pay exorbitant amounts of money for players, maybe overpay for players, and we're presuming, like, before I ask this question, we're presuming that Richie interviewed, because that's never been solidly answered. We're presuming he was offered the job. We're presuming that Luton have balked at something, right?
Or it'd be the £1 million.
We're presuming all of this stuff's happened. So, in presuming this stuff's happened,
we don't know, and that's the important.
No, we don't know. But let's presume it happened. Why did football clubs balk at paying £1 million or whatever it would be as a release clause if it happened? But they're going to pay X amount of money for someone who's flitting from club to club. I would say, if I was Luton, and let's say that was what they balked at, Wilshere was free essentially, and Richie would have had a sizable chunk because of a 3-year contract. I would have said, we need to get up. That's great. We'll get this guy in, but we have to invest in 3 years of him minimum. And that's £1 million. Whereas you get a player, you might pay £2.5–3 million, and they might not do anything, not even spark at any point. Richie's got previous everywhere he's been. A couple of examples where that's not been very fair on him, I don't think. But he won a trophy at Salford, and then he got canned straight away. He done a great job with Swindon. Probably should have stayed there. And I think that's the learning point for Richie is the fact that he did that with Swindon and he went to Salford. Thought the grass was greener elsewhere, and he got burnt. And now he's got this at Leyton Orient. He's got something he's building. He's very prescient in that. But I'll let you answer the question because I haven't let you answer the question.
Great question. I would definitely be in favour of paying the compensation fee because I think the value of a good manager is enormous. Like, you look at what Richie Wellens has done for Leyton Orient, as an example, or Graham Alexander for Bradford. It shows that, good management can be extremely valuable because you're actually investing in all your other investments with the right manager, because they're going to try and improve all these players that you're also paying for. So I would definitely be in favour of paying for the right manager. Whether it was just a compensation thing in the sort of Wellens or Wilshere thing, I don't know, because I think it's fair to say that there's possibly a greater probability that in 10 years' time, Jack Wilshere will be a Premier League manager than Richie Wellens, even though if there's a greater body of evidence of what, miles greater body of evidence of what Richie Wellens can do than Jack Wilshere. But I think Luton have possibly taken the gamble on the long-term project, which could be, carry some risks, because we don't actually know how good a manager, as Chris very rightly points out, we don't know how good a manager Jack Wilshere is. But I think
I believe that reputation comes to it as well. I mean, Frank Lampard's a great Championship manager, but he can't do it in the Premier League, essentially. So again, I think there's a lot of people get jobs on reputation, and sure. I understand that in a way. And I think Jack Wilshere, let's just say they had a choice of Wilshere or Wellens. People in the game, and I've seen this mentioned by numerous people, most recently Tim Sherwood, you go with Wellens because he's got the CV. I think if they're a bigger club, that's fine. I think there's also, and Chris may be coming on this, there's the essence of when your best players are getting sold. So Charlton got promoted. I know Kelman wasn't our player, but he's gone to Charlton. Galbraith has gone to Swansea, but there was talk last year of him going to Huddersfield in January in the same division. Not one Orient fan begrudged that move to Swansea for Ethan, because he's going up a level, and frankly probably been one of their best players, if not their best player this year. And if someone like Sheffield Wednesday or a team near the bottom of the Championship, or bottom third or bottom half of the Championship, came in for Richie Wellens tomorrow, you won't see any Leyton Orient be very upset, and some people will end up going off about a lack of ambition and we should have offered him 5 years, blah, 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 not in the real world. But no one's going to turn around in the majority and say, right, well, he deserves his chance. He's in the Championship. That's great. It would have been great if it had been with Leyton Orient. That's fine. Don't go somewhere that's an unknown in League One. I mean, saying this, he might go to Blackpool, and they'll be like, oh, that's great. But again, you got to look at the bigger project. And I just feel like for now, that's great. If he's got a chance to go to somewhere like Sheffield Wednesday, or just some random Championship club, I'm not saying that there's anything going to happen. I'm just,
sure.
I think you get my Chris. Chris, like that. What do you feel about that?
I think that I totally get where you're coming from with that, and I think that, I mean, again, it's kind of to deal with the other teams in this league, and it is frustrating when a player moves to another team in your league, because it's, why are they not making that step with yourselves? And we've had it from time to time before as well, where we've had players and they'll move sideways. But I think one thing that I do always really admire with Leyton Orient, and I hope you don't take this the wrong way, but you lost a lot of great players this summer, and you really did. However, I think the expectation, because of how well you did last year, was, okay, I think that we might potentially still be able to go up this season. I'll be honest, I wasn't too sure myself, but I do get where you're going from with that. And I think for me, I would have gone with Wellens at Luton. I think that if I was in charge, I would have gone for that. I don't think I would have agreed with it. I think Wellens should not go to Luton. I don't think he should go to Blackpool either. I think if he gets an opportunity in the Championship, it'd be crazy not to go for it, because why wouldn't he go for that position in the Championship? It's the perfect opportunity for him. And as I said earlier, what he's done at Leyton Orient, I think, is absolutely incredible. And I don't think it gets talked about enough until now, where, there's the rumours now, obviously, what happened a couple of weeks ago, where, Luton are going to bring him in. He's coming in as manager. And I think where now people are probably starting to notice Wellens a little bit more than they were. And I think that's rubbish, because he's been a great manager pretty much wherever he's gone. And I think that for me, he's got to stay. If he's staying in League One, I think ultimately he has to be at Leyton Orient. If he moves aside to kind of Blackpool or Luton, where they're going to sack manager every 2 minutes, it's such a bad move, and it would be a money move for me. Stay at Leyton Orient, enjoy what you're doing, and I think that I think the future's bright.
Can I ask you a question, Paxi? Because one thing I'm really curious about to hear from your point of view in terms of Wellens' potential. Obviously, he's been one of the best managers outside the Championship over the last 5 years. Won titles with yourselves and Swindon. Incredible job in E10. And I think, in level of technical ability to manage people and technical insight, fantastic. One thing I'm curious about in terms of higher level potential and managing bigger clubs is the media side and the fan relation side becomes more important when you manage bigger clubs. And one thing I actually really like about Wellens is that whenever he speaks, you can tell that he's speaking from the heart. He's not really filtering what he's saying. And I think there's something really likable about that. At the same time, I do wonder whether, how at bigger clubs, things that you might say out of context can sort of blow up a little bit. Do you think Richie Wellens has the ability to actually be wary of that aspect of it and be conscious about the sort of media and fan relation aspect?
I think he's learned from a few mistakes he's made at the Orient, especially. I'm only going to talk about that. But again, you're right. He speaks from the heart. Sometimes he should shut his mouth. And I remember last season being very upset by some of his comments about the game at Boreham Wood in the FA Cup, which we somehow got through, and then obviously we went on that cup run. You've got to start. We do things whatever he says, Gab. So like we're all in on Richie Wellens, which is probably why he says, get a scarf, buy a scarf, run around your head. We go, yeah, whatever, we'll do that, Richie. The club makes thousands of pounds in scarves. We do that. We don't care. Like the guy says something and he jumps. He does say things that rattle a few people, but do you not feel like? And it's society mainly, and I'm not going to go. I sometimes get on my political soapboxes, but we're not going to do that today. He's a personality.
Yeah,
and these big clubs don't know how to manage a personality.
It's an interesting discussion, isn't it? I think how much can you afford to be yourself and be authentic with a massive spotlight on you, and how much of it is about showing your authenticity and that you feel things, and being careful of how what you're going to say is going to get construed. And I think there's a balancing act somewhere in there, and maybe Richie Wellens with his wisdom, because I do think he's getting a bit more mature, with the experience that he's accumulated. Maybe he can sort of find that balancing act. So I think there's room for both sides, but I think that's a really important aspect when you manage bigger clubs.
But you also can worry about your media image more when you've got a bigger staff and more coaches that can take a lot of pressure. Exponentially over the last few years, the amount of analysts and, well, I'm not saying about the physio department, because we seem to get 10 to 15 injuries every year. But, the building blocks are there where you can see there are more people that used to be there, and, the nutritionists and all that jazz. But when you go to a bigger club, that then becomes even bigger. So you're those people as well as picking a team and managing individuals. So I'm guessing, and again, I don't know, I'm not Richie, that his role at Leyton Orient would be much bigger than it would be in another environment. So some pressures might not be there where he would vent off. And I've always been a big proponent of this, and I've always said that if I was a manager, I would always go up into the stands to watch the game, because I would be able to see where the gaps were and where certain things were happening. And whilst you can get a vibe down by the dugout, he seems to do that quite well. And he's also not ranting and raving in his team. And I think that's talking about becoming every game that he played, and it was just like he literally was berating him all the time, or at least in his ear all the time. And if he's up in the stand, he can't do that. So there's positives to it. Look, you give me Richie Wellens every day of the week. If you've got someone who's going to upset me every now and again by telling the truth, great, because he's telling the truth. If he had turned around after a again, we don't know what happened to the Luton team. But if he turned around after and he said, "Oh, you know, we just tried to be professional," it doesn't mean he had an interview. It might have been the club knocked back the approach. You don't know. But you just have to kind of go with it. You know, I'd rather have that response where people go, "He's being honest," than someone who's doing the PC answers and, you know, we'll go again. We've done this. We've done really well. He could have come out after the Cardiff game and absolutely been, well, we should have won it. But he went deeper into it. He gives you more. And you don't get many managers nowadays doing that, because they do go through the media training, and especially the ones that come from the Premier League or have Premier League careers, gone through the whole media circus of being how do you deal with this question, and how do you face the camera in that question, and how do you take a second to answer the question and make sure you don't say this. Richie Wellens is an Northerner, and he's not had that, I don't believe. So all day long.
What's your take on it, Chris, as a fan of a big club? I think it's fair to say, you know, in terms of how managers navigate the media side and how important or otherwise that bit
I mean, it's something that we've talked about plenty of times, isn't it, Gab? You know, the kind of like, I mean, something for me that I always mention is that I think you need to kind of, I think it's also about learning about the club and what the fans stand for. I won't mention any names, but, you know, a specific manager I can think of that we both know about, who doesn't understand the culture of what that club's about and what the fan base is about. I think that was something that I found, certainly being a City fan, for that we've had managers come in who haven't understood that. I think when I look back at, you know, our two successful managers, for instance, Phil Parkinson and Graham Alexander, they totally understood that. I don't have a problem with managers kind of speaking their minds and, you know, kind of saying it. I think it's just, you've got to understand as a manager that when it is going, you know, when it is falling apart or there are problems, in a way, I accept the criticism, but also I don't mind a manager who will take all the criticism to take it away from the players, which often we do see. You know, they will take on everything to protect those players, so that those players who are not playing great at the moment, they have that support. It kind of comes down to, I mean, I've said that another thing I've always said to you, Gab, is that I always think that managers have a duration of around 10 years. I think unless you're,
I don't think that's a one size fits.
I think for me, but I think if you look genuinely in the last 30, 40 years of managers, they've been around for 20, 30 years. I think when you've got kind of like, you know, your Ferguson or your Peps, even maybe your Warnocks, you know, those kind of managers have had to adapt. They have to adapt. They have to change their game.
I think I'll jump in here, Chris. I don't want to talk over you, but I do kind of agree with that sentiment. I think the game's evolving so quickly and so rapidly that people like Steve Bruce are left behind, hence why they're out. Is that he's the one who's created football as it is, in my opinion, and why we don't see wingers and that kind of stuff in football now. And that's why Pep's not untouchable, because everyone believes Pep created modern football. But I just wanted to jump in on that. I do believe that there is something in that, because, you know, there's a reason why these managers who are getting Premier League jobs and they continue to get Premier League jobs, and then suddenly they're in the Championship, and suddenly they're in League One, and then they're in League Two, and you're like, right, okay, well, that's not because that, you know, that they're not. I believe it's an evolution of the game, and younger people get it because they're the ones who are going through that system, whereas Steve Bruce went through the...
Absolutely, and that's kind of my point really as well. I mean, for instance, let's look at Mark Hughes, who's at Carlisle, non-league. You know, he had a little bit of a stint at Bradford. Was it great? No, it wasn't. I think that because the game changes. I mean, if you look at, for instance, Pep's team now, for instance, it's very different to what it was when it first started out, because the game is constantly adapting. It's evolving. And for me, like I say, I mean, I just genuinely think that managers have got a duration of roughly around 10 years. And the game just changes so much that you don't see these managers around anymore. And I think that that's where a lot of these managers at the moment, that were successful 5-10 years ago, are really struggling.
I think there's a degree of truth in that. I also think a lot of it depends. I think every person's flawed. I'm not going to go into social and anthropology or whatever, but I think every person's flawed, and therefore every manager or head coach is flawed. So often, what dictates managerial reigns and whether they're successful or not is not actually just their strengths, but also how well they delegate and good at and allowing the coaching staff to be strong, amazing tactician, but actually in terms of man management or motivation isn't really, the sort of inspirational figure. But you've got someone on the coaching staff who can bring that emotion. Let them cook, So I think a lot of that's what creates sustainability for managers. I don't think you can have.
Do you think that Phil Parkinson would be a championship? Right. So that's kind of backing up. It also comes to money as well, doesn't it? Mark Hughes was a Man City manager, and he had lots of money and these better players and a big, backroom staff have kind of brought it out, and then he ends up in non-league. It just seems that, and they can get a big club in Italy because the game's totally different. But Conte's, and your Mancini's and stuff like that, it's for me, it's a tough gig. Like I wouldn't. I've done my scouting courses, and that was hard enough. God knows what it's like to be a football manager. Yeah. But I specific managers that are very lucky as well. I can't see how Darren Ferguson, and I'm sorry to call him out, sorry Peterborough fans, but how he's got a third gig at Peterborough, I don't know. Chris Wilder's gone back in after all that furore at the end of the last season in Sheffield United because they've probably thought, well, that was the wrong thing to do.
With Darren Ferguson's record in League One, almost always been in the top 6 until recently.
Because the game's adapted. I would say that is part of the thing. Darren
Ferguson could probably recreate Peterborough with the Leyton Orient squad right now. I'm not saying that's what's happening in Richie Wellens. I think the one part of our squad which we haven't invested in is our defence, essentially. And we haven't changed our defence. We've got a much, much better team than we did last year. I think Aaron Connolly is one of, if not the best attacking player in the division. And I'll die on that because he's a much rounded player than a lot of other players. He's exceptional.
I watched the extended highlights of that game, the Doncaster game. I thought, even though Ballard scored a hat-trick, I would say Connolly was man of the match.
He's exceptional. He's exceptional. And you know what? If we get through January without someone coming in for him in a championship, I'll be very surprised. But again, that builds your reputation. And you can go into a club like Lampard did with Derby and do a good job there, and then suddenly he's elevated. But he hasn't had that kind of experience long enough to be able to go into a big club like Chelsea and then suddenly not be in charge of everything. And then you have people like Rooney who goes to situation that they were in at that point. And then suddenly his reputation gets him these jobs at other places, and it all goes. I mean, I cannot see Wayne Rooney getting another manager's job now. I mean, I don't think he needs to, but I mean, I just can't see it happening.
I think Rooney should have spent longer on the coaching staff. I think these managers who are high-profile ex-pros, they wanted to jump into the hot seat straight away and actually want to be part of the coaching
It's the ego, Gab. It's the ego. These players have been on these pitches for 15 years and they're always on Match of the Day and Sky TV and stuff. That's why it's got to be involved in some way. It's not about money, it's the ego of it. And you'll see stuff.
and I think there's a more passionate side to that. I think it's this fear of not being relevant or fear of being forgotten about. So it's sort of ego, and it's also kind of quite a human fear.
I'm always very conscious of the human side of it, Gab, but
sure.
Again, there's players that you don't see for 10 years. They've done a great job, and then you don't even recognise them anymore. You know, there are some people that just want to stay relevant, or if not, stay away from their misses at the weekend.
So I wanted to quickly round off on Leyton Orient. We've covered a lot of ground there, haven't we? El Mazzuni, back to his best, Parksy. Is he reclaiming his 23-24 form?
I don't know, because I don't think our midfielder's quite clicked yet.
Right.
I think selling Jordan Brown on paper was a great idea. Purely from his contract's running out, he wanted to go
you can't
situation.
Sell photos of Jordan Brown anymore, which is the problem.
Well, no, I just think if Jordan Brown was playing with Mazzuni in midfield, I think our midfield would be a lot stronger and up the pitch a lot more. Whereas I feel like he's been held back a little bit in this season in certain games because of who he's playing with, and it's been very, very. I think Tariq Backinson in some games has looked amazing, and in some games he's looked like he's going to be the next Usise and end up playing in non-league.
Which is the opposite of Jordan Brown, isn't it? Because Jordan
Brown was a 7 out of 10, 6.5, 7.5 for every week. Every now and again he'd excel, but he'd never drop below that because the effort that he gave. And he was obviously skillful and he was obviously a good footballer, but he may not have been the best at all, or even in the top 10 central midfielders in the division. But that effort that he gave, and his drive, and his bite, and his connection with the fans, always made me kind of like migrate towards him. I like attitudes like that. It's when you have players who don't get involved, and they think they're bigger than what it is. El Mazzuni's El Mazzuni. Gab, you won't hear me a bad word about it. A lot of these players have signed these contracts because of Richie Wellens. Not to play for Leyton Orient.
Yeah.
Some of these players could have gone and played in the Championship. He was playing really well for Oxford last year. And then Rowett came in and suddenly he's out of the team. Yeah. You know, he was playing well. And he was starting in the Championship. And back to what we were saying about Richie Wellens, he's a brand now. Within playing circles, he's a brand. And these players will play their best football under him. There's no surprise that Aaron Connolly he had a bit of a dip and then suddenly he's gone on a bit of a run. Don Ballard suddenly come in and he's scoring goals for fun. I mean, he's second in the league, one goal scoring charts at the moment, which.
So just to summarise what you're saying there, quality in this Leyton Orient squad is possibly better than what you had last season. However, the balance and the equilibrium between these players is still to be established. But if you can find that, whether it's through current personnel or additions in January, I think you've got a chance of putting them around together.
I think the tactic, the tactical change that he's made recently, he played that at Cardiff and it didn't work because obviously we ended up losing that game. But in a shootout, I'd probably go with the Orient more times than not. I've never seen two forwards play for the Orient with as much potential to be as good as I think they could be this season. I genuinely, I think if you've got a player like Connolly that can create and score from deep as well, and then you've got Ballard who's very great, very good in the box, but a good finisher from anywhere really. Kelman, both of from what I've seen so far.
Yeah.
If you give me a season, at the end of the season, ask me the question. I'm not going to answer it now because I think, Ballard might not score another goal for the rest of the season. But I can't see that happening. I can see them both getting to 20 goals. I think Ollie O'Neill's the big one. If we can get Ollie O'Neill to be fit for longer than 5 games, that'd be
but then could he play
a
as a
big
wing
thing.
back? That's the question. Well, Paxi, thanks so much for joining us. Really excited about that Conley and Ballard partnership. So very exciting. Hopefully plenty of goals to come for Leyton Orient. Really exciting start of season as well, Chris, for Bradford City. So keep up the great work on the podcast, gents, the Lowdown podcast and the 1911 podcast as well. Make sure everyone you get subscribed to those. Thanks so much for watching. This has been the EFL Debate League One podcast, and we'll see you again next week.